The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Tulio's camera is shaking there. If you're watching that, this was us yesterday at around this time. At least all of us in California, in sort of the Southern California area, going through an earthquake. And we were in the middle of a staff meeting, and I think that's Tulio's view of me.
That was wild. I'm watching, and the background shaking. I'm like, what is happening? Why is everybody's screen shaking? And it's like, oh, there's an earthquake. And it was
sometimes we get the aftershocks here in Arizona.
Yeah. I was wondering if you might have felt it or not on this one, because it was kind of San Diego based. But welcome to the Bliss Business Podcast, everyone. I'm Steven Zakas, joined by my co-host Tulio Siragusa. And today we're focusing on something foundational to business success, but often misunderstood, and that's community. And in a world full of automation, AI, and when you're in the middle of rapid growth, maybe building real human connection can feel like an afterthought. But what if it's actually your greatest advantage? So we're diving into it with our guest. Tulio, introduce our guest today.
Yes, it'll be my pleasure. We are joined today by Jennifer Kaplan, who's the founder of Evolve PR and Marketing. She has over 2 decades of experience in PR marketing. She has helped hundreds of brands go from unknown to unforgettable. I love that, by the way, unknown to unforgettable, by helping them build deep, trust-based relationship with their audience. Her firm specializes in purpose-driven storytelling, community engagement, and social impact. Jennifer, welcome to the show. Let's start here. What inspired you to create a PR firm that focused so deeply on community and mission-aligned marketing? What was the genesis of that?
I think my family, just growing up, was always very involved in the community and instilled that in my brother and I, who's also an entrepreneur and does a lot in the community, whether that's just philanthropy and giving back, or just finding other ways to engage, with the audience and demographics that he's looking to attract, and do it in an authentic way that's from his heart. And so that's something that my family's always been about. So sort of ingrained in me, and then just had the opportunity when starting a business to really lean into that with that mindset from not only myself with our company, and then getting into PR and really showing our clients the way to engage as well in order to build their brand and awareness.
I love that.
Yeah. Let's talk a little about storytelling, because it's kind of more than a marketing tactic. It's how communities are built. What makes a story resonate today, especially when maybe attention spans are short and competition is high? What would you say?
That's a good question. The essence is storytelling of what we do. So I think just for us initially, it's extracting those elements that we feel are going to stand out. And part of that is maybe something that's trending or topical that we know people want to hear about right now. Some of it is our knowledge of certain outlets, writers, reporters, to know what they're looking for. And then, not that the client is last, because it's not in any order, but then where are the client's needs? Where can we impact them the most in their business? To where if we focus on that element, it's really going to maybe not transform, but just help move the needle and show the benefit of the PR as well.
Yeah, this takes me back to my J school days in journalism, understanding kind of the different things that us reporters were looking for and what made a story kind of stick out. And it, like you said, it can vary quite a bit.
Yeah. I love when there's studies done on these kinds of things too, because there's some people, it's not enough to be storytelling. They want to know the stats. Give me the stats. So turns out 72% of consumers are more likely to recommend a brand that tells a meaningful story, according to Headstream. So why do you think storytelling has become such a central pillar of trust building as well?
Well, I call that cause marketing in a way. Marketing is a huge umbrella. PR is under that. So I know we're talking about PR, but marketing as a whole, cause marketing, if it feels good for people and they're supporting an entity or a business that is giving back and doing good in the community that they live in, I think it also makes the person want to connect with that brand. Tom's Shoes did that 100 years ago. They were kind of a pioneer, I guess, if you will, in buy a shoe and then they're going to donate a shoe. That shoe is not the most, I'm not going off of judging anyone's style, but it isn't just in general the most stylish shoe. It might have comfort. It might have, some cool styles, fabric, all that. But I think at the end of the day, people like to know that maybe they're buying that shoe and then there's that give back element. And the PR for something like that is tremendous. And going to that marketing being that big umbrella and PR being under it, marketing is in our name. So we get that question a lot about the marketing element of what we do. And the marketing, as I define it, which is fun for our conversation today, is community outreach and cross-promotional opportunities. So what other ways can we get our client's name out other than PR? And a lot of times it can lead to a PR opportunity. So maybe we're tying in with a nonprofit. Maybe it could be something as simple as maybe a grand opening with a ribbon cutting and having the mayor or the governor or some, community leaders and VIPs. So that aspect of marketing, I feel it isn't as tangible initially as like doing the website and doing paid ads and all of that. But I feel like it's all of that has to happen. They have to see it here. They have to, it has to be in different aspects of how individuals are, because you're talking about, there's so much out there and they need all of that. And I feel like it can all be cohesive together. But that's the marketing in our world is exactly what, we're talking about.
Any examples that come to mind of campaigns that you worked on where that deeply connected with the community?
Oh gosh, I feel like each client, we always try to encourage a for-profit to tie in with a nonprofit. Initially, I would say something that might connect with them personally, so it comes off more authentic. But then, if there's something that might just align with their brand, if it's a restaurant, maybe they can give something to, feed the hungry or, something in that realm. We have a lot of people that want to do stuff with animals and kids. But obviously you'll see a lot of that during Breast Cancer Awareness Month or, even with Earth Day coming up. How can you build community consciousness and create sort of a movement in a way to your demographic and your followers, because those are the people that are going to be kind of have that brand equity in what your company is. If you can connect with them and kind of make them champions because they want to support the cause. So, spend X dollars and a portion goes. Those are very basic that come to mind. We'll do, pop-ups with pet adoptions and yoga, come do yoga with maybe some puppies and then the puppies are available. So it makes it kind of hard to say no to doing some yoga with this cute puppy. And then there's an opportunity to adopt the puppy, so those kind of connections we like making that help our community and help our clients.
What a brilliant idea.
So I know I'm not taking my family to one of those.
I was just like that. It's not going to happen anytime
I'm like,
soon.
I already got a dog right now.
I'm like, if it was a goat yoga, I'd probably take home the little goat. You mentioned something about being seen in a number of places, and it reminded me of a study. It was actually done many years ago. It was the Apollo Project study, where they discovered that you had to see an ad like 3 different times at different mediums.
Yep.
We actually influenced your mind decision. That was when we collected data with like little top sets things on the TV, and people would actually give input like that. That was way before a lot of the technology we have now, but it's fascinating how that's held true. And often when you're new and you're still very founder led, those stories have a lot more heart because they're coming from your passion for the business, the love you have for the business and for what you're trying to solve. And over time, when companies scale, unfortunately, sometimes that storytelling gets lost a little bit. So what have you found that works in helping organizations as they begin to scale, maintain that same momentum and excitement and passion in continuing those kinds of relationship with the stories that they're telling?
Well, that's the job of us and you and all the people that are in the marketing world, is kind of have those guardrails and keep them on track with that. Provide some of those reports, remind them of the successes they had when they did do it. And if their competitors are not doing it, I think that there's even a greater opportunity for them to be the one leading the charge. And going back a little bit to what you said at the beginning, that it's 3 times, I believe that it's probably 5 now or more, because we do have all of these different mediums that we're hit with. Obviously social media, forwarding a newsletter, sharing something, with friends and family of what you heard or read or saw in traditional media, or, something that popped up in a feed, or something that texts you. So I really feel like it's so important to make sure that you're aware that it's happening on many levels, but also, to keep on track with the storytelling, because then you lose your identity, I feel, in a way, because that story is the core, I would hope, with the right people around you and guiding you to who your business is. And you don't want to lose that.
So true.
All right, we've got an audience question. Let's see what they've got here. Jennifer, what's an underrated or overlooked tactic for building community that you wish more brands used?
Very, very appropriate follow-up to this.
Yeah, no, I like that. Underrated or overlooked tactic for building community that I wish more brands used. I think the storytelling and it feeling very authentic is something that I think brands have sort of gotten away from being, don't be afraid to go to your core. And that's kind of, what we're talking about, versus some of the external, what are they doing, and looking at everyone else. I think our society is so quick to do that. But when you're telling your story of maybe how you started, or the journey you've been on, and being real, people connect with that more. They want to support you more. There's just something that's going to resonate with them, because you've got to get people to want to move. If it seems very pomp and circumstance and it doesn't come off authentic, I feel like people these days see through that. So I'm not saying there isn't a time and place for that, but I just feel like being real, people go back to that. And I wouldn't lose sight of that, and getting caught up in all the lights of all the things. Be true to who you are.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And especially, this is like the most marketed to generations that have, lived. They're just getting constantly hit with stuff. So they're very savvy, and they know when something doesn't ring true. There's a stat.
If I could just follow up with that, sorry.
Yeah.
I feel like people do business with people they like and people they trust at the end of the day. And a pizza place is a pizza place, or a lawyer, or a doctor, or a realtor, whatever, or a nonprofit. I want to give money. Who should I give? And I'll give it to this guy, without like really thinking about it. And so I feel like if you've made that connection and people like you and trust you, you're going to have a really hard time losing that business, because they like you and they trust you. So that to me is why that authenticity is so important.
Yeah, there's a couple of stats we use. One that I repeat a lot is the 306% increase in lifetime value of a customer that's emotionally connected. So if you've done that and done it right, you're going to see a lot more value, like you're saying. And then there's this other one. It's 2/3 of consumers, this is Harvard Business Review, say that shared values are the primary reason they have a relationship with a brand. And if we were unpacking that a little bit, how do brands operationalize their values so they show up consistently in how they engage with people?
And they tell their story. I mean, if businesses, I mean, I feel like social media has allowed people to do that. You can kind of be a voyeur a little bit more than traditional media or PR, where initially it's a little more static, an article. And I feel like with social media, or at least just businesses taking a YouTube and just sharing more behind the scenes of who they are, knowing the people who are the ones making things happen,
that transparency, right? That's one of the things that builds that authenticity, right? Is sharing
I'm sorry.
No, go for it.
Well, people say, not to digress a little bit, but people say there's no such thing as bad PR. Well, there is, I say. And so if you're showing all these great things that you're doing, and people can see all of that, I mean, how great that people want to champion for you and connect with you. Sorry, what you said.
It's true. I think that's the key, is that nobody wants to be sold anything, but people do desire to be part of something greater than themselves, and community brings people together, and nothing builds community than stories. And because you see a resonance of yourself in those stories, and that's what makes you feel connected. And companies who understand that, they're building something sustainable because there's stickiness in that,
Yeah, there was something pretty incredible that happened here this weekend. If you guys or your listeners get a chance to peek, there's a very, very, very small space that a pizza place went into. Pizza place is called Strad, STRAD, Strad Pizza. Not in town, new to town. However, it's a big influencer that is opening up this pizza place. The influencer does not live here. And like I said, it's new location in a little strip mall. This influencer obviously has a platform of about 4 million, I think, on YouTube, and 4 million maybe on Instagram. So obviously there's that platform. They created such an incredible community event this last weekend for their grand opening that, I mean, I was blown away. I've never seen anything like that. I've lived in this city my whole life, and I do PR. But they created a community event that went beyond just the pizza. They did a whole thing in the parking lot out front. They brought in cars and did things that were in line with their brand. It was exotic cars, and I guess they kind of appeal in that crowd. But the people that they were able to get come out, it wasn't just the first 100 people in line get a free slice of pizza. It was way deeper than that. They didn't even focus on the pizza. The pizza was the background, the byproduct of this event that they were doing to bring people together, show the cars, bring your car. It was like, oh, I can bring my car. You're going to bring your car. And then, by the way, we might get a piece of pizza. Or now we know where the pizza place is located because we just went to this huge event that was in the parking lot. And there's a church in this parking lot. There's a Burger King. I mean, there's everything. And they really did something epic, in my opinion, where they focused on the community first. They didn't even discount pizza, hand out pizza, do anything with pizza. And literally their pizza places, walk in, order, slice, and leave.
Yeah, I think influencers are very aware of community, just because, every little thing they say is often reflected, back to them by their community. So just going a little deeper on that. So was the car theme, was that related to something that the influencer's known for, or was it totally different and related to just the brand, the pizza brand?
So I don't know if the influencer is, but it's definitely part of the brand. Their space is on an end cap, and they did a mural on the side of the wall with some cars. So again, I don't know if it's the influencer's personal passion, but it for sure is part of the brand. And that to me should be a page out of the book as an example. They had tens of thousands of people there.
That's
and like
crazy.
I said, this is not a local influencer, and this isn't the second and third location. This is a first location for someone out of state. I've not seen anything like that.
Yeah, that's crazy. Tulio, you said we had another audience.
We have another one from Martha on YouTube. For small business owners just starting out, what's one small action they can take to start building community around their brand? Great question.
I mean, there are a lot of great people within your community, depending on the business, that are going to be within a certain radius to patronize your business. I mean, there's a lot that are destinations, but they might pass 10 pizza places before they get to yours. So really focusing in and around your community. But next door and some of the community platforms that exist on social media, I think have a lot of influence to get other people to know, what an experience was or what a new business is in the area. Obviously, I think PR is an element of it, but I'm not totally biased to that. But, doing some sort of announcement and, tying in with your local community, to bring that back, not to be cliche to what we're talking about. But I do think that that's really important. Maybe there's a give back and something that you can do, philanthropic. I mean, doing stuff with students and schools is another good one, depending on the grade level. You're also hitting the parents, so there's some benefit to that as well.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit deeper about what role you think, for example, having a well-defined purpose as a business plays in the overall success of that business. Like when you have a brand that comes to you, how often does that conversation come up in terms of what is it that they're standing for in the marketplace? What role does having a purpose play, and how effective they build community, or how effective they are in their message in the marketplace?
Yeah, well, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, but not to go down a political path, that, it's a very polarizing time right now in our communities and in our world. And so I would say that if your values align and you publicly put that out, that, it could create some of a disconnect with certain aspects of the community. So I think that it's important for brands to be aware of that and not do anything that might create a segment of a population, if that's not in line with their values, is my point. If they're just doing it to do it, maybe they should rethink some of that, because they might regret having done that. But I think knowing, a lot of businesses have core values. And I think just as much as connecting with a story, values, morals, ethics, all kind of in that, I think are important. And the values of a business can really come off when someone walks in the door, from how they're greeted and how they're treated, and the story. So, using maybe this example this weekend, that should not be a one and done. Those people that are now, connected to the brand that maybe didn't even know it before, they should walk in the door every single time and feel that same emotion. Now, obviously that was on steroids for that weekend grand opening, but they should at least feel something that is consistent with what they felt that day. So is that being carried through with the staff and, with the experience they have? And I think experience is really important, and you can tie your values to the experience that people have. Because some people's establishment or vibe is to be a little more rough or gruff, and some are to be more soft and gentle. And that is part of the value of the company. It comes from the top down. And so I think that also translates heavily to the experience that people are going to have.
You said something that reminded me the value of practicing classical marketing. In classical marketing, if the response is neutral or positive, if the pendulum can swing neutral or positive, then use it. If there's a risk that it can go negative, don't. And that's probably a good thing to remember before putting things out there that could upset a certain group of people, either neutral or positive. I always subscribe to that model. Always ask the question, is this going to be perceived neutral or positive? If it's going to be perceived negative by a group of people, you're alienating a bunch of customers or prospects. So good advice.
I think like Jennifer mentioned, if you have to be about it, if you're already about it, if this is our brand, then yeah, go for it, right? Because this is what you're about. And even if that does alienate a certain group of people, you've always been that, right? You've always been that way. But if you're kind of pandering or something and you're not about it, this is where you kind of get into trouble, I think, where because your community is maybe a little bit mixed of different people. And I think we've seen that time and time again. I think like Harley Davidson went through that recently. Some other brands have too. But you see the ones that are like, no, we're about this, and they can push back, and that resonates with their community, right?
It's true. And that takes courage to say, this is what we're about.
Sure.
We don't care who's going to upset. So
yeah, for sure.
That's an emerging thing, by the way, that's come out of a lot of this polarization. Is people's like, I don't care. This is what I stand for. I think there's a lot of value in that too, for sure.
And going back to what you said, Stephen, it's you, and maybe not even in a political, like in that pillar, but just in general, maybe you did something that, is creating some polarization. Listen to what your audience is saying. And maybe that's a way to recover with the community around you, is show that you're listening and maybe didn't realize that you were kind of creating that and ahead of it in a way that could create some backfire. So I think knowing that maybe a business listened to what I said and cover some of, I'm not saying, put a stake in the ground and say, I declare I'm this or that, but just something that might be a little, start to do some polarization, is listen to the community around you.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Again, you're not going to go wrong, I don't think.
That's what Harley Davidson too. It's like,
yeah. For us, when we market, a lot of times we're really trying to dig in on either that purpose first. Do they have one, or do their values first? Do they have those defined? For companies that don't have any of those things defined, or may even have lost touch with it, do you guide them at all with any of that, or what role do you take in some of that?
Can I add a caveat to that, Jennifer? Shareholder value is not a purpose or a value. There's a lot of companies that think it is. It is not. So we're not talking about companies like, we're here to create shareholder value. That is not a purpose of value.
No, that's not inspiring the community or.
Yeah, totally. I do believe that they need it. And I feel like they might think that they have it. But then when we start having a conversation, because we're on that storytelling side, not on a logo that is just static or things like that, we end up realizing they don't really have it or they don't really know it. And so, we try to guide them through that journey and through that process to extract it and something obviously that they can feel good about and get behind. So I do think it's important to have it and definitely guide them through some of the questions that we ask and that process, because once we put a pitch or a press release out, we need those things. And if we don't have them, we don't really, we can say, come in and buy this, or this expert can talk about that. But again, I go back to that authenticity, and just having that where, because at the end of the day, if I said, well, we can get you the results, we'll get you on TV, we'll get you a magazine, but it still has to connect with people. They might say, well, I had that and phone didn't ring. Well, maybe because we need to develop some layers, to the story and to the message that you're giving that people are going to connect with. It's one thing to secure a media opportunity, but it's another thing to have it translate in a way that's going to get people moved, in a deeper way. So that, yes, we do want to gut.
Yeah, I've been in those discussions with clients where you're like, okay, you're talking about the features and the benefits and all this stuff of, whatever, but it's like, well, let's take a step back and, this is really what you're doing here is helping people with X, right? You're really doing this higher sort of service. And I've seen the light bulb go off with them where it just hasn't quite been defined before, where they're like, yes, that's exactly right. That's what we're doing. And then you can start to see the stories, I think, come out when you kind of have those discussions. And, if they're really good, they have a whole bunch of those stories, and now you're starting to hear about them when you're
feel that momentum. Totally.
Yeah. When you prompt that.
We always tell our clients, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Do you have a testimonial? Do you have a story we can share? Because we're always going to say the best thing about our business or our company. So we know our clients can speak, about what their business or service or product is. But if someone else is saying it and sharing it and the impact and the movement that it had in their life or in their community, it's tenfold, the impact. And so we want to try and share others' stories about how that client of ours helped them and supported them and, again, their product or service. Even when it comes to a restaurant, there's ways we can do it with restaurants too. So yeah, I think it's really important to make sure they're telling their story with the right purpose.
So Jennifer, for leaders that are listening, maybe some might be listening and thinking, wow, I hadn't thought about that. I haven't really taken the time to elevate what my purpose is or create values. I've just been so focused on trying to create value for what I think this needs to happen. What's maybe a practical thing they could do this week, something actionable they could do this week to get them on this right journey to building community?
I would, start by maybe listening to some of the customers. They're already in your four walls. And so rather than trying to jump outside and kind of swimming around looking, I would say who's coming in already and what's important to them. And maybe we even get a stronger champion in that client, but also hear why, what is it that's keeping them coming to you? Maybe my clients will say they always, reply quickly and they are there when I have segments and it makes me feel, supported, or, just what are those things? Oh, okay. Now let's really highlight that. When we are talking to new clients or new businesses, you're hearing from your existing clients what impact you're making and what they like about your business. So maybe you can really be in tune with that and take that to others.
I hear you saying, find out why they did business with you beyond the transaction. Like, what was the experience?
And they're staying with you and are continuing to stay with you. If you've got a client that's there a couple of years, why? They've got other choices. Oh, you're reliable. You're, trustworthy. You do this, you do that. Well, maybe you didn't really realize that and realize that that's why they're continuing to stay with you. Now take that when you're looking at new opportunities or new business. new meetings, new conversations, emphasize that. And you know what, we make sure that we XYZ and, whatever it is.
I find it fascinating how many companies discover things they didn't even know about themselves. Like they're surprised to hear often through that curiosity why someone buys from them beyond the transaction. You could learn so much about your business that then you could take and create a story around it. It's such a powerful, you're like sitting on gold, and not enough companies do that. Like, tell me why you bought from me beyond the transaction. What was the feeling? What was the experience? What were you trying to accomplish? It's like the person who needs to buy a new suit because they're going for a job interview. They don't really need a suit. They need something that makes them feel powerful. It's such a beautiful way to understand what your business is about from the client's point of view.
Especially when it's a commodity. How are you going to differentiate yourself? It's the service, it's the customer service, it's the follow-up. We've got a bunch of really nice steakhouses here in Arizona, and I've gone to quite a few of them. There's one that will call you the next day. You don't need to answer your phone. When I see it, I'm like, oh, go to voicemail. They're always gonna call the next day to see how their experience was. If there's anything that, anything you want to share, anything you can do different, blah, blah, blah. They're the only one. And so that to me always stands out. And I share that story. I think it's great that they do that. Doing things.
I love that so much because it ties in, like, one of the big things to get people into building that community, it's around that consumption emotion area. When you're consuming the product or service, it is, that experience that you have. And so they're going this extra step that this is going to build that connection, right? This is an extra step no one else is doing. And it's such a simple thing in the scheme of things. And this is how you get that customer that's always coming back to you, right? Versus your competitors. It's because you're getting into those consumption emotions, and this is like one of those little, almost a surprise and delight kind of thing. It's like something extra that you just aren't expecting, right? And that's
so funny. I was thinking about that exact surprise and delight, the episode we did around that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like in our tool, our AI CMO tool, go to aicmo.io. That's one of the things we have though in there is that surprise and delight tool, because we know how important it is to build that that consumption emotion connection right there at that experience time. This is what takes you to that next level of community, is doing something that's just a little outside the box, maybe something that's unexpected, something that's above and beyond. And when, like you said, there's all these different steakhouses out there, but there's only one doing this one thing. And that's just huge.
Totally.
Jennifer, we ask all of our guests this final question. Do you think love belongs in business?
Well, love is in our name. So that's an easy answer. Evolve has the word love in it. Yes, a little word scramble, but
and if you can't see, if you're just listening and you aren't seeing the video, behind Jennifer is this this artwork where there's just a whole bunch of hearts in this.
Yeah.
So she's all about
Warhol of hearts.
So you kind of walked into that with me. I can grab a couple things around my desk and environment here that all are hearts and love related. I think that goes back to one of the things I said at the beginning about people do business with people they like and people they trust, and being authentic. And I really thought that was great at the Bliss and everything that you're about, because I really think that prevails at the end of the day. I'll put it in emails. I would love to meet with you instead of, I'd really like to get together and see. To me, that's just, an important thing for people to feel. And if someone doesn't like that, then maybe that is where, maybe we're not going to connect as well. Yeah. I think that's a great question. And my answer is yes.
Yeah, we call that sometimes like that email thing. It's like, for me, it's like, okay, how can I bliss this? Is what we've turned it into, kind of just this verb of,
Yeah.
making sure we add that extra little step of love or something in part of our process. And, we just try and do that over and over again.
Yeah.
Jennifer,
That's great.
it's been so great to have you. Thanks for sharing all your insights. There's a lot of companies, they sometimes struggle, like, where do I get started? So there's really no excuse today, because you have people like yourself who could help them. So where can people find you and learn about your company, Evolve PR and Marketing? Where can people find you?
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate both of your time today. Our website is the best Evolve PR and spelled out and marketing.com. And yeah, you can learn about us and our team and our clients.
Thank you, Jennifer. And thank you to our audience again for tuning in to the Bliss Business Podcast. Until next time, keep building with purpose and heart.